it will be a long time before that evidence is clear. I will tell you, Dan, no one to our knowledge has thus far claimed credit for this attack, and the FBI is pretty much got this thing under wraps. They're simply not saying anything right now. In fact, if you call the FBI, you can't reach them. They have all gone to their strategic command center inside the building, and this city is locked tight while it decides how to put the government back into place. Dan?
As you see this picture live in New York, in the middle right-hand corner of your screen, the Statue of Liberty. Lady Liberty overlooking the worst attack on the mainland United States in the history of the country. In the shadow of the Statue of Liberty, a direct attack on the freedom of every American and the freedom of every freedom-loving person anywhere. That is not too strong a statement. At least three hijacked planes crashed into U.S. landmarks today, destroying both of New York's Twin Towers, the World Trade Centers, 110 stories up. They were each just beyond the Empire State Building, which is dominating your screen at the moment with the smoke from the collapsed Twin Towers, both towers down now. The Pentagon was plunged into flames in an unprecedented assault on the key symbols of U.S. military and financial power. This videotape of the collapse of the World Trade Center buildings. The loss of life is expected to be catastrophic. There's no other word to describe the expectation of the loss of life from the collapse of the giant towers, where some 50,000 people work, and that says nothing of the people who work around those buildings. 50,000 people on the average day work in the buildings, and in the immediate vicinity, many more thousands work around it. The two 110-story buildings collapsed one at a time in a huge cloud of smoke and fire about 2 hours after the initial impacts. Those of you who have been with us know this, those who joining may not. First, one airplane hit one tower, then incredibly, inconceivably, almost unbelievably, another airplane hit the other tower. President Bush has called the deliberate aerial assaults, quote, an apparent terrorist attack. He has, of course, ordered full-scale investigation. The president, last report, was flying from Florida, where he was on a visit, back to an unknown destination. There certainly is a school of thought in Washington that runs he should return immediately to the White House, the symbol of stability and all that we hold dear, and walk right into the White House and take command there. Another school of thought is, well, that may not be such a good idea. We'll see where he goes. In the meantime, Vice President Dick Cheney is in charge at the White House in the Situation Room. New York Mayor Rudolph Giuliani said there has been, quote, a horrendous number of lives lost in the assault on this city. These are the worst attacks on the U.S. mainland in modern history. You'd have to go back to the Civil War for anything approaching it. That's not too strong a statement. Certainly this is not on the order of the Civil War, but for an attack on the American mainland, not in the 20th century, nor in the early stages of this, the 21st century, has been attacked such as this. And I'm going from memory here, but Abraham Lincoln once said, speaking of how America had never been invaded, that said Lincoln, one cannot imagine the footprints of an enemy in the Appalachians or an enemy drinking from the Ohio. But what we have seen and heard today in these horrifying scenes come as close to that as we've ever had in this country. Palestinians in the occupied West Bank and gunmen at refugee camps in Lebanon are reported to have fired in the air to celebrate news of the attacks. Hospitals here in New York are overwhelmed with patients as that massive cloud bellows into the skies, but also the smoke can clearly be smelled in places such as St. Vincent's Hospital, where they're just overwhelmed. Hundreds of people are burned from head to toe, according to Dr. Stephen Stern at St. Vincent's Hospital in the Greenwich Village neighborhood of Lower Manhattan. The whole of Lower Manhattan is coated with a half-inch of dust. Lee Cowan is live in that tip of Manhattan, now covered by smoke. Lee?
Hi, Dan. Perhaps a firefighter summed this up really the best way. He said that, frankly, you're looking at ghosts down here. What his fear is that the command post, at least the first command post that was set up after the first explosion, was just to the west of the north tower. And what he fears now is that they were right in the line as that building collapsed some hour and a half ago. Now, he said those are some of the best, some of the brightest folks that know exactly how to work this kind of search and rescue effort, some of the logistics, who to put where and why, and he hasn't heard from them since. That's what he's worried about the most. Excuse me. We talked to the building manager of the World Trade Center just a short while ago. He said while he was on his floor trying to evacuate people, he got out of the building about a second before it collapsed. He said just on the floor that he was trying to evacuate people on, there were hundreds and hundreds of people trapped as it collapsed. He barely got out. He doused the people inside, made it much any better than he did. We talked to a person just a short while ago who said he actually tried to run into the building. Didn't work there, was passing by, trying to rescue as many people as he could. He's now been taken to the hospital because he has some injuries with his lungs. A lot of stories like that out here, Dan, that we're hearing. People going in, trying to do their best, but at this point, there seems like there's so little left of the building. We can't get much closer now than about a block away, which is where we were about 5 minutes ago. But clearly, everybody here is worried exactly what's going to be found excuse me, underneath the rubble when they get down there, Dan. Yeah.
Lee Cowan, where the smoke permeates the air. A horrendous act of terror has, in a matter of minutes, changed the most famous skyline in the world. No one will ever look at this skyline again in exactly the same way. These attacks have forced evacuation of all government buildings in Washington, including the White House and other tall buildings across the country. And we're told to say the evacuation of the White House, we're told that Vice President Cheney with Condoleezza Rice, who's head of the National Security Council, are in the Situation Room of the White House, which has its own special security. Cell phone communications on the East Coast have been severely interrupted, and you are urged not to make cell phone calls, particularly unless you absolutely have to. All commercial aircraft have been grounded in the United States. We were told earlier that Canada had ordered a grounding of aircraft in Canada. The New York City primary election for mayor was called off today. Stock markets are closed. World leaders are expressing shock and horror. Foreign financial markets fell sharply on news of these attacks. The key London investment index plummeted a little over 5%. Oil prices went up by 3%. U.S. markets were closed. Go back to Harold Dow as we look at these scenes from Lower Manhattan. Harold, the bravery, the heroism of the police and firemen who plunged into this extremely dangerous situation needs to be noted.
Well, there's no question, Dan. When I arrived on the scene, I ran into one of the police officers that I knew there, Cliff Hollingsworth. He was trying to get me to some areas, and I know when the building started coming down, he ran in one direction and I ran in the other. But these firemen, these rescue people who were there, these men and women came in to help try to save lives. And I suppose they were looking for other explosions, but I don't think anyone thought at that point that this tremendous building would come crashing down so quickly. I mean, as you saw from the video we just looked at, the heavy steel girders of part of that building and the concrete all crashing down with the dust, landing on these people who were trying to save lives inside those buildings.
And we've noted before the distinct possibility that there may still be people trapped inside the debris of these collapsed buildings. That we'll have to see. Now, this just in, President Bush, we're now told, is to make a statement. This would be his second statement of the day from Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana. Now, that's, at Shreveport, Louisiana. Now, if you're asking, well, we thought the president was flying back to Washington from Florida. That was the widespread assumption, but assumption is the mother of a lot of erroneous reporting. And in this case, the assumption proved to be incorrect because the president, for reasons not yet explained, but no doubt will be explained, flew from Florida to Barksdale Air Force Base outside Shreveport, Louisiana, and we're told that the president will make a statement from Barksdale Air Force Base shortly. We, of course, will carry that as part of our continuing CBS News live coverage. Dan Rather at CBS News World Headquarters in New York with one of our most experienced.
Okay, of course, we want to bring you up to date on what exactly is going on here in the state of Massachusetts. As we finish listening to Dan Rather, you can see there at the podium Acting Governor Jane Swift. She's going to bring us up to date on what's going on here in the state of Massachusetts.
Let me just say, first and foremost, that I join with all Americans in being shocked and saddened with the events that have happened this morning to Massachusetts families and citizens who may have lost their life in these terrorist attacks. I am saddened, and I express my deepest sympathy to those families. We have taken all prudent and necessary steps in Massachusetts to make sure that the families of the Commonwealth are protected and that they're safe. We have not received any specific threats against any Massachusetts citizens or any Massachusetts places or structures, and we continue to feel confident and comfortable that the public and the citizens of Massachusetts are secure, and will continue to take all necessary steps in order to guarantee that. I join with the President, with all appropriate state and federal agencies, in being committed to making sure that whomever is responsible for these terrorist attacks will be brought to justice. I also want to convey one special message to the citizens of the 9th Congressional District. I think the most important thing that the citizens of Massachusetts can do today is to show up in large numbers to vote. Terrorists operate by creating a culture of fear. It is understandable that citizens of Massachusetts, seeing these reports on television, would have some fear. I want them to know that we will take all necessary actions and have taken actions to make sure that our public voting places are safe. We will continue to have a state police presence at those places, but the best thing that citizens of our great country and our great Commonwealth can do today is to send a very strong message that we will not bend to the terror that has been inflicted on our citizens and on our nation. And we will not shut down democratic exercises of government. And the most important exercise of our ability as a nation to be self-governed is by being able to go without fear to cast a vote in an election. So the election will continue. The Attorney General and I feel very strongly that people should go out and vote, and I'm confident that people will be safe, both those who work at the polls and those who exercise their right that I hope they treasure more deeply today than on any other day to go and vote at the ballot box in the 9th Congressional District. Do you have any questions?
The Secretary of State is calling. The Secretary of State is looking into the possibility of suspending the election today, the primary election. Are you aware of that?
The Attorney General and I just talked to the Secretary of State. We conveyed to him our confidence that there has been no specific threat against any polling place or any facility in Massachusetts, that we have taken all appropriate steps to protect the safety of the citizens and families of Massachusetts, including those in the 9th Congressional District, and that it is both of our strong feeling that this election should proceed, that it is the strongest statement as Americans that we can make in the face of a terrorist attack. I'll let the Attorney General add anything.
I agree with Governor Swift. I've told the Secretary of State that it is my belief, along with the governors, that this election continue. I will take, and I have instructed him, I will take no legal action to suspend this election. This is an important day. It's a very sad day. It's a tragic day. But it's important that we preserve our right to vote. We are a democracy, and government will carry on. I'm very pleased the governor has taken the appropriate steps, not only to ensure that there's protections so that people can vote, but also taking measures with the other agencies that the appropriate protections and security measures throughout the state are in place. And I want to thank the governor for her leadership on this.
Governor, is there a state of emergency right now, and can you talk about what that means to the residents of the state?
There's no state of emergency in Massachusetts. Our National Guard is ready, but has not been to a great degree called upon. If, in fact, there is any threat or any request, if there are requests for assistance from New York, if there are requests from the federal government for assistance, we stand ready. The state police are on a stage 1 alert, which only makes all personnel available. But again, let me just convey that there hasn't been a specific threat against any Massachusetts institution, against any place. We are taking prudent steps.